Thank you. I'd like to call the May 9th, 2023 meeting of the Winchester Board of Education to order. And as usual, can we please begin with the Pledge of Allegiance?
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, and can we do the roll, please? Jeanette, could you begin?
Jeanette Broder.
Tara Sunday.
Nora McCarsky.
Doug Fennier?
Melanie Brady Shanley. Cheryl McGlynn.
Tori Lavetri.
Sandra Strubar.
Renee Waldron.
Okay, thank you.
Kristen Peterson.
Oh, great. Under agenda review, do we have any changes to the agenda? Anybody would like to add anything? Changes? If not-
I wanted to ask about one of the policies on the agenda. On the agenda, we have policy 5145.511 at first, second read, where, here we go. New business discussion and possible action. Policy 514511, exploitation, sexual harassment. And when you go to the meeting minutes from the policy, it was sent back to policy committee.
At the policy
Yes.
committee, this one was sent back at the policy committee, and didn't we address that? Is that not the one we addressed? We did, one of them we addressed and we sent back. They're mandatory policies that can't be modified. So that's what was discussed at the policy meeting.
Well, that part was discussed, but for whatever reason, one of them negates the other. So either the minutes were wrong and they did not send it back to policy or send it back to committee?
So what had happened, this particular policy was was in our policy packet as a first read for the April meeting. It was sent back to committee for the April committee meetings, which were at the end of April. During the April committee meetings, it was then forwarded back to the May meeting because of that first term there, the sexual violence term. And it was addressed during the last committee meeting in April, and then now forwarded back to the board for the May meeting as a first read, I believe.
That's correct. I got a motion back to first read that, I made that motion, Tara seconded that, 401 on our committee meeting. Motion back to first read.
It seems quick because we had a board meeting, a committee meeting, and now back to a board meeting all within like 3 to 4 weeks.
Right, but I think what Kristen's saying, she thinks the minutes reflect that it went back. Is that what you're saying?
It did go back in the April meeting to the
There's
committee
The
meeting.
March
Yeah.
meeting,
March,
April meeting, then it went to the
April
committee.
meeting, I'm reading the April meeting minutes.
The April board meeting, committee
April
meeting?
18th?
April 18th, board meeting minutes,
Board meeting, yeah, then it went to the committee,
back to committee.
and then the committee, we sent it back.
to this board meeting.
Right.
We talked about that at committee meeting.
And just for the record, one of the things that we talked about the last meeting last committee meeting, policy meeting, is in my review of our bylaws, there is no required first and second read. Bylaws say, if there's a policy that we need to put in place, we don't have to go through a first and then a second read. Just one read at the board meeting is allowed. If we want to change that, bylaw, we can do that. We've been, as long as I've been on this board, we've been doing 2 reads at the board meeting. I think, that's something that we'll discuss at the next policy meeting when we talk about changes to the bylaws. But currently, our bylaws only require 1 read. They don't preclude a second read.
So the minutes are reflecting its movement back to policy. It went to policy, and then policy said, let's go back to first read,
Yes.
which is why it's on today's
Yeah,
agenda.
I flipped a few pages over and found it, thank you.
Okay.
Okay, all right, so we're all set now?
I think so.
Okay,
The only other thing that we may want to consider adding tonight was just the fact that we did receive the notice from, the study from the State Department of Education, if the board wanted to put that on as a discussion item.
So moved.
I think that would be something that we might want to put on as executive session.
You gotta speak up so Barbara can hear you.
I'm sorry. I think that would, put that on as a potential executive session.
So that wouldn't be able to be put on this evening, then? We would need to
Correct.
wait for a different evening.
Right.
Well, we should have time to review it, right?
Yes, and you all should have a copy of that this evening. And it's on your email and in your Board of Ed file folder.
Yep, there's no next agenda, put on executive session.
Okay, any other discussion on agenda? I would like to welcome our visitors tonight, Jeff Kitching from Ed Advance. Thank you for coming out. We're looking forward to hearing from you. I had asked Melody to reach out to Jeff because it seems like every time I open the newspaper, Ed Advance is buying another building, starting another program, and I thought it would be useful for us to know exactly what sort of programs you're running and what you offer for us, so. Yeah, just give me one more minute. I'd also like to welcome Teresa here for her presentation, and I can't let the opportunity go by. Annie was absolutely amazing. I mean, you and Jackie just did an enormous amount of good stuff, but you had some serious talent on that stage. So I think there's at least two who could be Broadway material based on what I saw. And they looked like they were loving it. That was the best part. Every kid up on that stage was having a good time. So thank you for all of that. And I also just wanted to mention, this is Teacher Appreciation Week, and I think the teachers should know that this board does appreciate them. We know it's a hard job. We know that they're in demand right now. There's a lot of communities that are begging for teachers, and I think we're very fortunate to have most of our positions filled. That's a fair statement, right?
Yes, it
At
is.
this moment?
Yes?
And we appreciate all the hard work they do and all the dedication they have to our kids. So, with that being said, we have Teresa on first. Is that fine with you? Okay. Teresa, the floor is yours.
Jeff, you may not steal Teresa after this presentation.
So I think everybody knows me, right? Teresa Payton, Community Partnership, Chance Director. So I wanted, Mel gave me the opportunity to come tonight and talk to you guys a little bit about our summer camp program that we are facilitating through CHAMPS. So a little bit of background on it. Last year, we had the opportunity to apply for an expansion grant, which was part of, everybody's favorite acronyms, ARP, ESSER, So we applied to what was originally designed to be a competitive grant program, and then the state decided to equally fund every application. So we were awarded $180,000 for the expansion of out-of-school time programs for kids last year. The technical grant period was January of '22 through June 30, '24. I personally enjoyed that letter because we did not even get notice that these funds were available until April of '22. So it was a scramble, and my original intention with the grant and what you guys approved last year in the application process was expanding our offerings into the summer. That was the biggest negative space area that we have for our enrichment programs. And because CHAMPS has a long history with partnerships with the Y, with the library, it seemed silly to try and reinvent the wheel and just capitalize on existing partnerships and programs that exist in the community. So we partnered with the YMCA, American Mural Project, Winston Recreation Department, and this year the Warner Theater to provide scholarship opportunities for WPS students to attend these existing camps. My original intention with the June 30th of '24 grant ending period was that with some creativity, we could offer 3 summers worth of programming to students. So in my head, you have $180,000, 60, 60, 60, 3 summers, it's neat and tidy. The state has decided that summer 24 is off the table in terms of prepaying things with this funding. It's disappointing because, as you know, when we're fiscally responsible and trying to stretch a dollar as far as it will go, it's disappointing to hear that that isn't necessarily in line with their guidelines. So last summer we did spend about $60,000, and that, so here we are now with $120,000 and a June of 24 deadline. So you'll see in your packet some information about where the scholarship program is right now. It's funny because I think Mel and I finalized this on Friday, and I've got another stack this big of camp paperwork that I'm processing on my desk. We sent 169 students in K through 6 some type of camp scholarship offer. We send offers to any of our staff members who live in Winston and have students that attend Winchester Public Schools in the grades, all have an opportunity for a scholarship. Any student that participates in a CHAMPS program has an opportunity for a scholarship. And then we collaborate as a team with social workers, guidance counselors, special education teachers to create a teacher referral list. And we put out offers and really look at each student and help decide like which camp is best for which students. Because they're all different and all of our kiddos are different little people, so we use Camp Rising Star for students who might need more support behaviorally or with their social emotional skills. Camp Mo is a traditional outdoor summer day camp. Winston Rec Department, a lot of families like the close local department, and this year we were able to offer a scholarship to all 26 of the Annie performers for a week of performing arts camp at the Warner.
Wow.
That's a very exciting new addition to the program. And we offer 14 students a scholarship for a summer arts week at American Mural Project. So right now, well, as of this 5-4, we have, of the 169 offers, we had registered 109 students into different camp programs. Like I said, since the 4th, what's today, the 9th, the last 5 days, not including the weekend, there's probably another 10 to 15 on my desk that I've been processing. I have a very firm deadline of this Friday because there's a lot of back-end work that comes. So we're really excited that we have all those programs, and then the grant also helped me identify a secondary gap, which is when kids, all of the camps seem to be closing their extended day programs through the COVID years. So we identified another gap when camp is done at 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon. How does a working parent kind of juggle that? So we created CHAMPS After Camp, which is just an extension of our current aftercare program, runs through the summer, and we work with All-Star Transportation. So if kids are at rec downtown, we get them over to Pearson for the aftercare, and then Rising Star and Camp Mo use Pearson as their pickup and drop-off location, so their bus naturally brings them back to Pearson. So we can sign any kids out of their camp buses that need extended daycare until 6 p.m. So, any questions?
What is the actual, if the students were paying for it, or the families were paying for it, what would the cost be for like these different programs?
Okay, so I'm glad you asked that. It's a very detailed number. No, Mel told me to like not get too excited and do like crazy PowerPoints, but I have all kinds of answers. So 1 week at Winston Rec Camp is $115, and that's on the lowest end of the pay scale. Our students that attend Camp Mo, those are 2-week sessions for a total cost of $590. Rising Star is $500 for a 2-week session. AMP is, all-inclusive AMP price is $500 for a week, and the Warner Theater camp is $325 for a week. So when I made these calculations based on how many were registered, on 5-4, the scholarship offers and registration right now had a total cost of $48,476.
It's wonderful.
Which is probably increased by several thousand once all the ones on the
And-
desk are processed.
Just to be clear, like many of our families wouldn't, many of our children would not have the opportunity to be able to go to these high-end camp experiences without this experience and assistance. So,
Is there any thought about trying to follow up with those families who haven't responded before your deadline?
Yes, so it's a multi-step process. The very first part of the process is, depending on what your scholarship offer is, the offers start going out in March. So there's like a series of deadlines. First, the interest letter kind of define which camps you're interested in, which sessions, and there's a deadline for those. Once I receive all of those back, I put together individualized camp packets for the students depending on what they've selected. And then those go out, and then there's lots of follow-up.
Emails,
Lots
phone
of
calls.
emails, lots of phone calls with deadlines. I've taken a kind of personal oath this year to like be really vigilant about the deadlines, because last year the funding came late, and I was overly generous with the deadlines, and kids were like handing me paperwork while they're trying to load the bus to go. So we're trying to avoid that this summer. So this Friday is the deadline. It was actually May 4th, but
I'm trying to work with
It's right.
Teresa on boundaries. We're developing boundaries.
yeah. And this year we made it really clear in some of the letters that were sent out to like the general population that, you know, I recognize this is the second year maybe that you've been able to go to camp, but as of now, we have no guarantees for any future funding. I will obviously tirelessly look for sources of funding throughout the next school year to try and maintain this level of programming, because I would say, based on what we already have registered and what's pending, you know, we're looking at 125, 130 students who will get a no-cost camp experience.
That's awesome.
Was ECAD an opportunity?
I have not looked into that at all, so I don't know.
Got it.
One thing that I am curious about is looking for a partner with some more specialized services for some of our special education students that have higher physical needs. So I'm in search of a new partner. It's a little late in this cycle for that, but as we look for future funding, that will be the next kind of step, and we know that those can be pricey, yes, but we want to make sure that there are no barriers to which students are offered opportunities. I do think at the end of this cycle, there will be funding remaining in the expansion fund that we can use through the end of June of '24. So we're looking for ways to expand after school and out of school time through the school year, the CHAMPS grant. We can't do anything that would supplant what we're covering in the CHAMPS grant, but we currently don't have any like vacation programming with our partners. We don't run on Fridays right now, and during the COVID years, we had expanded into some Saturday opportunities. We'll be looking to, when the dust settles on camp, utilize those funds to expand through the school year next year.
So in our district, we have staff that there's 23 kids that are registered, like within our own.
Yes.
That's
Yes.
awesome. I didn't
Yep.
realize
We
so
have a
many
good
lived in
amount,
town.
of lots of our teachers, paraprofessionals, interventionists all have students that are attending K-6.
Cool.
And I think of, with the drama students, that opportunity was like jumped upon. Of the 26 students right now, I believe 19 are registered for a week at the Warner. So that's a nice new partner to
Yeah,
bring in.
that's That's
I'm always looking
amazing.
for, especially kids that have been in our programs for a long time, it's always like, what's the next thing that's gonna continue to engage them in an existing program, so.
Great.
Always looking for something new.
Fantastic.
Thank you, Teresa.
Thank
That
you.
doesn't include transportation, right, or does it for?
So Camp Mo and Camp Rising Star offer transportation as part of their registration. Those buses leave from Pearson at 8 a.m. and come back to Pearson at about 4. If you are at Rowley Street for the rec program, we provide busing to after camp if you need it. We have not had a need for that with the AMP program. And right now, we've not identified it as a strong need for the Warner program, and I'm not sure if logistically for that particular program, their hours are they don't really align with all the others to make that happen. But if you need aftercare, we do provide that transportation. And the aftercare is open to anybody, not even just the kids that are on the scholarship weeks. If you are attending any of those camps and you need aftercare, you can register through the CHAMPS after camp.
Teresa, where were you 10 years ago?
Unfortunately, we weren't doing camp then. We didn't know all the ways the world would change.
It's
but,
just amazing though, like how much you've grown in your position, in your opportunities, how much you seek and bring home.
Thank you.
That's incredible.
Thank you.
Great job.
Thank you, Teresa.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Edit your book pages.
Oh, sorry.
We're almost done. All right, great. Thank you.
Tara's like, I'm so sorry I volunteered for that. Never again.
I'd like to welcome Jeff Kitching from Ed Advance. Thank you very much for coming tonight.
Right, Mel told me not to go crazy with PowerPoint slides too, so I just have handouts.
That's my music. I'm sorry.
Want me to move the chair over?
Yeah, do you mind?
Grab Christie's microphone.
Better if I sit than stand?
Make yourself comfortable.
I can be really loud, but. So, thank you so much. I'm Jeff Kitching. I'm the Executive Director at Ed Advance. There's two things going, well, three things actually. I've provided you all with a copy. You may have gotten one at the beginning of the school year of our annual report, which is just some information about Ed Advance as your RESC through the fiscal year, or school year that ended in 2022. Inside that is also a report that we give to each district in our region specific to Winchester, some of the specific services that we provided last year in Winchester, and I'm here to embellish a little bit more on some of those and talk about some things that we have going on. And then the last document is a one-pager that I'm going to use for some of my talking points, and I have extras of these if people in the audience want to take a look. But for those of you who don't know, Ed Advance is your regional education service center. We service all of northwestern Connecticut. We are statutorily required to exist. The state legislature created RESCs almost 60 years ago now, and I've been at Ed Advance for the last 7 years. It's been a quick 7 years, it seems. I've been up to Winchester a number of times, and I just need to congratulate all of you in what I've seen and the progress and just the amazing things that happen in this district. Mel has been a great partner for me and for Ed Advance, and so is the entire Winchester staff. We see this school district as one of our critical partners, really, and a district that we know we need to pay extra attention to, and it's fortunate because we have a few districts we try that with, and sometimes that attention is reciprocated, and we work into a good partnership. Other times it's a little more difficult. It's never been that way in my 7 years at Winchester, and certainly my time working with Mel and with this board, so I can't thank you enough. And I know you've got a lot going on, so try to summarize and be a little brief, but also happy to answer any questions. So again, we service the Northwest Corner, which includes 29 different school districts, 32 different communities, all the way from the Massachusetts-New York corner, all the way down to the 84 corridor, and districts like Danbury, Newtown, Bethel, Brookfield, along 84. Those are all part of Ed Advance as well. For the last 7 years, and really the reason I'm at Ed Advance is I feel strongly about these three Cs as a structure for our organization. We are significantly different from the other 5 RESCs in the state in that we don't operate magnet schools. So I spent my whole career, I know Mel spent a chunk of her career in the CREC region, and with all due respect to CREC, we're not CREC. CREC is not only the Regional Education Service Center for the capital area, they're also the 10th or 11th largest school district in the state. So while I cut large checks as a district leader to CREC year after year, I also lost teachers, I lost students, and honestly, as I said, I wouldn't be at Ed Advance if we were in that same business as a lifelong public school employee. I felt Ed Advance was different, and we had an opportunity, and these 3 Cs have really helped us get there. We stay connected internally, so we know what's going on across our district, or across our agency, so that if we can help out other departments, we try not to operate in silos. It's not efficient, and it's not effective for our districts. But more importantly, we stay connected to districts. The directors from all our departments stay connected with their constituents. I meet regularly with the superintendent's groups and superintendents individually. I try to get to their office 2 or 3 times a year, and I'm always available. We've changed the culture in our agency from one that really was based on individual departments going after grants and contracts. 7 years ago, we had a $25 million budget, and somewhere around 70% of that came from grants and state contracts. Currently, the budget I just proposed to my board last week is almost a $50 million budget, and now almost 70% of that comes from local school districts. And while it may be a little unnerving to think that local school districts are paying that, but what it really means is we provide a lot more now that districts need and want, and they'll only come to us if we can do it with high quality and we can do it more cost effectively than other private options. So we're really proud of that flip. It makes us more viable as an organization, and it also makes us more relevant in the region because we've shifted our focus to not just going after grant money to justify positions and pay for a program that we're not even sure districts need. We've shifted our mindset to meet and stay connected to districts, find out what they really need, and instead of offering programs, offer solutions to the things that can really help that they're struggling with, and I'll talk about some of those. And basically, if school districts need it, we do it. Other than yellow school buses, I'm not. That's the other. Magnet schools and yellow school buses, I still have PTSD from all of that, and I don't envy Mel from. So we are in the food service business. We provide school lunch for Winchester as one of our clients there. It's a service that we do for about 7 or 8 districts, and primarily because if we weren't doing it, they would really struggle to find another option. It's not a money-making venture for us by any sense, although federal funding during the pandemic helped, move the needle a little bit for us, which was good. But we are the adult education provider for the entire region, both the required programming from the state and Foothills Adult Education, the enrichment programs, that's us. We do special education transportation. We have about 100 vans that crisscross the region. Pre-pandemic, that was 150 vans. We lost a lot of drivers throughout the pandemic. We're fighting to get back. We've raised our salaries. We've raised our benefits packages. We're starting to be able to recruit more from the private side, which is good, so we can provide that service at a much higher quality, much more consistently, and at a significantly lower price than the private sector, so we're proud of that. Summer programming and after-school programming, Mel, you should have Teresa give me a call. I can connect her with a grant person that could probably help her find a lot of the money. I promise I won't make any
No job
pitches,
offers, Jeff.
But honestly, I'm listening. I'm saying it's good for her, and honestly, we have a totally revamped grant department and a chief of talent and development, Tracy Lay, who's actually the national president of the Before and After School and Summer Camp organization, and they've got lots of connections and can point her in some good directions.
That'd be great.
Sorry, that's a side note. But again, if districts need it, we do it. There's, on the back side of the sheet is just some information about us. Last year, as I said, we had a budget. We hover around 640 full-time employees. Seasonally, that number goes up over 800, depending on what adult ed has going on and our before and after school summer camps. We are, depending on the year, either the second or third largest employer in Litchfield County at that rate. That 60% fee for service that was last year is up to 70%, as I mentioned, and we're down to only about 19% reliable on state and federal grants. That's going to go up this year because of a very large grant that I'm going to talk about that Winchester was one of the beneficiaries of as well. And what we're probably most proud of as a large quasi-governmental but nonprofit organization, we operate on about a 10% margin. So 90% of all the money we take in goes right back to the communities we serve. And if you do some research and investigating into big nonprofits like the United Way, even the Connecticut United Way, they don't operate at anything close to 10%. It's closer to 25 or 30. So we're really proud of that. We've got 7 locations. We service over 47,000 students across the region in some capacity. The vehicles and everything else, we serve almost 10,000 lunches daily, or meals daily across the region, and information about the agency. So that's who we are. Specific to Winchester and some things I'd just like to highlight that I know we're really proud of, and it's just been so great to work with Winchester. We, I want to say 4 or 5 years ago, Mel, began working on a curriculum instruction professional development project to help Winchester revamp their language arts and math curriculum. Our staff absolutely loved working with your faculty and your administration on that project, and I think the results, are a result of their hard work and the work that they did, but our staff loved working with them on that project and continue to support work on the teaching and learning front here in Winchester. Jonathan Costa and his staff did some work between Gilbert and Winchester on the Portrait of a Graduate. I'm sure some of you may have been involved in that work that we were really proud of. Again, I mentioned food services. Mel's always been helpful, as Doug mentioned. Unfortunately, when you see our name in the paper about buying a property, we're unsuccessful more than we're successful. We've been led down a number of roads. Mel's always been helpful in trying to help us find the space we need for programs here in Winchester, which we are tremendously grateful for. She really single-handedly helped us save Head Start in Winchester by finding space for us. Another service that we provide, Head Start support for families that qualify in the Winchester area. So we're excited about all of that. The big news recently, a few pieces of big news. We did purchase finally 2 buildings in Torrington that both will have an impact on the entire region, including Winchester. The first was the former Sacred Heart Church property in downtown Torrington, which includes a church building, a rectory, and then an abandoned convent building that sits on a side of the road that used to have a school on it. So we are going to reconstruct a school facility on there where there was a school, attach it to the old convent, and it will serve as a regional early childhood center for Northwest Connecticut. We will provide Head Start service in a portion of that building for about 125 students, primarily from Torrington, but we can take tuition students from the surrounding communities as well. It'll serve as a professional learning and support center for private and commercial and nonprofit daycare and preschool programs for the entire region. We will offer birth to 3 services through the state of Connecticut out of that facility, and anything else we can think of, including an initiative that's related to the second property we just purchased. So we also purchased the former E-School in Torrington. It had been abandoned by the Torrington Board of Ed about 6 or 7 years ago. For the last 4 years, our STEPS program, which is an outplacement program for high school students with behavioral and social emotional issues, has leased space in a small part of it. It's a huge elementary school. It looks more and feels more like a middle or high school, 70,000 square feet with a full-size gym. And so STEPS will have a permanent home there, which is a good thing for the region. We currently support, on any given day, between 45 and 50 6th through 12th grade students in that facility across the region. Again, about a third to 3/4 of them are Torrington students, but it's open to the entire region. But more importantly, it's going to become a permanent home for a number of adult ed services for the whole region, and most significantly, a new initiative to develop a career pathway and workforce development center for Northwest Connecticut that will offer options to high schools across the region for their students. We're not looking to get into the magnet school. This isn't, intended to supplant or replace any existing high school programs. It's really designed to partner with the high schools in the region and their existing programs and help them, make them accessible to a broader group of students and develop specific programs in workforce need areas like the two non-negotiables in my book for the staff that I've put in charge of this are a manufacturing and construction program and an early childhood education program, which goes back to what I said about the Grove Street facility. We want to offer for high school students across the region who think they might be interested in education, because I think part of our charge needs to try to recoup and reinvigorate the next generation and get them to believe that, contrary to what they see on the 6 o'clock news and what they might hear from all of us in education throughout the pandemic, isn't really what education is like in real life, and they should pursue it. So try to come up with opportunities where kids don't have to leave their home high school. They can take coursework, but we can offer college credit-bearing courses at this facility or out at regional high schools. Use our fleet of vans to get kids around, to offer college courses, get them college credit, get them engaged in their high school education so they finish high school first of all, but also prepare them to hold down well-paying jobs as high school students. And in many cases, when it comes to manufacturing, construction, we're looking into healthcare pathways and engineering pathways. Give them a way to make a good living while they pay for college, or understand it might be an option for college, and really open the doors. So we've hired 2 people already, a gentleman named Dan Cocciola, who developed a program like this for the Hamden Public Schools, and he had 125 kids in that program this year. 25 of them graduated with their diplomas. 15 of the 20 also had associate's degree upon high school graduation, and 20 of the 25 worked their junior and senior year in part-time jobs that paid over $25 an hour. So they were skilled laborers that were trained on specific machinery and trained in general and specific engineering topics. Some of them are going to go on to college. Some of them are going right to work. The soon-to-be retired superintendent in Torrington, Susan Lebomsky, is going to work with Dan. Dan is the director of that program. Sue's going to consult on that to help us get these pathways. We have connections with the Chamber of Commerce, with some major businesses in the region we're starting to develop. And it gets a lot of political attention, but no traction, because there really hasn't been anyone who can hook the workforce side up with the education side and create these kinds of pathways. And I feel strongly that EdAdvance can do that work. And I also feel strongly that we need to get our state support, because the cost of this can't be on the backs of school districts or employers. The state has lots of money to invest in things like this. They should do it and really attack 2 fronts at once. Engage more kids in high school and different career paths that they're really interested in, and develop a greater workforce for Northwestern Connecticut. That's one initiative. And I talked about the Early Childhood Center. The big one, a new initiative at EdAdvance, is the development of a division of social emotional learning and mental health. And so this was something that was coming anyways at EdAdvance. Judy Palmer, again, poaching retired superintendents lately, so soon to be retired superintendent in Region 7, will come to Ed Advance to direct this division. And she and I have been talking about this for a long time. It's a passion of hers to try to help school districts develop programs for their entire school system and school district, kids at all grade levels, around their own social and emotional well-being, around kindness, around a lot of these topics that really, I think it's a little short-sighted of us to blame the pandemic for some of what we're seeing now. I think a lot of this was percolating across school districts everywhere in Connecticut for a long time. The pandemic just shined a light on things that we probably weren't paying enough attention to before. And then in December, this gift was dropped in our lap by the federal government, a grant application that we had submitted to provide school-based mental health professionals to 30 schools in northwestern Connecticut. We submitted our application a few days after Thanksgiving and a week before Christmas, which the federal government never turns anything around in 3 years, let alone 3 weeks. But we received word that we were awarded $9 million over 5 years to fund a 0.5 mental health professional for 30 different schools, as I said, and Winchester is one of those participating districts. I'm even more excited and frankly completely shocked that we already filled all 15 of those positions. We did not poach a single counselor, social worker, or school psychologist from any school district in the state. We developed some nice partnerships with Central Connecticut State University and Southern Connecticut State University. We did a lot of searching outside of the region. We did a lot of convincing in the private sector that if you do that kind of work, you should come try to do it in a school and help kids and families. So we're off to a great start, but really the kickoff of the entire thing will be next September, but we're just really pleased to have some of these counselors and social workers who have started already, including here in Winchester. So that grant will cover the next 5 years. We have the funding for that. We've got lots of things planned to make sure they're trained, to make sure they have supports and resources outside of the school, and not be, not supplant anything that's going on, but just supplement what already exists in schools and communities. Just help schools make certain that kids and families get access to the supports and the types of counseling and any other supports they need. So we're really excited about that. And I know I said it'd be brief, but people that know me, that's about as brief as I can be with all three of those things all in once. And I don't know, Mel, if I left anything off I should talk about.
I think we're good. Thank you so much.
Yeah, Jeff, I'm really glad you came because it seems like you guys keep reinventing yourselves and adding to your portfolio. So I think it's important for all the boards in your region to know what your capacities are. Right. And maybe to come to you with needs that they think you can fill that you're not even filling now.
Absolutely. And that's all I ask of the superintendents and the boards is, if we're doing something in your district and it's going well, it's nice if you let me know, but if it's not going well, it's imperative that you let me know so we can fix it. And if there's a need we're not meeting, all you have to do is ask.
And that's one thing I just want to acknowledge about Ed Advance and Jeff's partnership there is, there's not a issue that we can't go to Jeff with and, someone on their team will solve our problem. So, and come up with a solution that works for our district. So they've been great thought partners to be able to work with. So thank you.
And I'm really looking forward to seeing how Judy develops the SEL program. That should be very exciting.
She's excited. She's a little busy right now with, but once she's done, she's going to hit the ground running. So it works.
Right.
Excellent.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
for coming.
Thank you.
Sure.
The tech program that you're talking
Yep.
about, or not tech necessarily, but
Career
is it gonna
pathways.
be like Bristol Tech?
No. We have Woken Tech in Torrington and the state high school technical system. They have their own, arena that they live
Right.
in. I think,
Well, Bristol Tech
I'm not a
has
superintendent anymore,
the
so I can
kids.
say things like this. I wish they were a better partner in a lot of senses for school districts. So, and they do a lot of really great things, but, in their own vein. We're really looking for the facility and the staff in this program to look for partner high schools. And so the example that Dan, who will direct the program, uses, so, if Northwest Regional has some kind of unique agriculture set of courses that they have a great teacher and kids love it, but they're only getting 5 or 6 kids to sign up every year. And we can package that with a few other high schools and, know that we can get those kids there at 10 o'clock every day for that class. We can arrange that
Okay,
kind
so
of thing.
it's an exchange versus
Yeah,
an
yep.
in-house.
Yeah, and there's, we have a lot of details to fill in, but we've given ourselves September of next year, September of '24. That's kind of our deadline to have at least 2 pathways worked out, as you're saying, the details and the strings. At least 2 worked out, and as I said, one of those has got to be early childhood, because we've got to get started on that. And the daycare providers and the preschools in the region just so badly need some kind of infusion of quality staff. So if we can get 16, 17, 18-year-old kids we can provide a lot of training for, like I said, get them more engaged in their high school education, possibly interested in teaching as a profession, and provide some workforce. It's a win-win.
Any other questions for Jeff?
I have a million. I'll talk to you later.
You can call, but contact information.
Thanks, Jeff.
Excellent. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Thank you.
Have a great day. Thanks.
Thank you.
Public comment. Steve, you're the lone member of the public. Would you like to address the board?
Can I say a few words?
Sure.
Yeah, Steve Svedrak, 103 Indian Meadow Drive. I think we all came away from last evening's annual budget meeting at the Gilbert School feeling pretty good about things. For the first time in my memory, we haven't had someone make a motion to cut a line item. And so that's sort of a first for me over many, many years. But I want to congratulate you, Mel, on your budget presentation and on the budget that you put forward. Nancy, you need to be thanked too. And I think there's good support for education in the community now. From what I can tell, people trust the Board of Education. They've seen good progress. And so I think we're in a pretty good place and feeling good about the budget that's out there. But it's still got a ways to go. And I don't think we can take for granted that it's going to pass easily. Usually in a year where there's not much commenting about a budget or a department, that's good news. And this year there hasn't been a lot of commenting about the budget. But we do know that there are taxpayers, some taxpayers, because of revaluation, are going to get a pretty big increase in their taxes. And so whether this translates to votes at the referendum, we don't know. So we can't take this for granted, and what I would urge you to do is to talk with your friends, your relatives, your neighbors, anybody who's a registered voter in town to get out to vote on the referendum on, what's the date again? The
27th.
27th, yep, which is Saturday. So again, congratulations, and, we're halfway there. Let's see if we can get to the finish line.
Thank you, Steve.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay. On our consent agenda tonight, we have the minutes of 3 meetings, including the special meeting of April 18th, the minutes of the special meeting of April 25th, and the committee meetings on April 25th. Is there a motion to approve those minutes?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
Second.
Second from Sandra. Any discussion? If not, all in favor? It's unanimous. Thank you.
I'll abstain, Kristen.
Oh, okay, sorry. Thought you raised your hand.
801.
8-0. Gilbert report, as Steve mentioned, last night went well. I do have to say that there remains in the community confusion about the structure of our education in Winchester. I can understand that. We're very somewhat unique. I suggested to Holly last night that it would be beneficial to the trust to in some way publicize a article that describe the history of the trust and the way it's structured, the way the lease of the building is set up with the town or the school, so that people can get a better understanding of how that all came to be and how it works. I still, when I hear people ask questions, and I say, yeah, I was asking those same questions a few years ago. I think it's confusing. So I think going into budgets and going into a lot of other situations, it would be helpful to the community to understand the relationship between the Gilbert Trust, the Gilbert School, and the Winchester Board of Education. So I hope she follows up on that, but I think it would be beneficial. Ralph Nader has his new newspaper out. Maybe that would be a place to start. Whatever, but I hope they do that. At our last Gilbert meeting, Deb Lewis presented a series of results from standardized testing. I wish I could say that they were great. They really weren't, and she readily admitted that. The most encouraging part of her presentation is I heard a lot of comments from her about the strategies that they were employing to identify what their weaknesses were instructionally and curriculum-wise. It sounded a lot like what Barb and Rosie often tell us that they do when they see those same things. So I'm hoping that that's going to pay off. But she was clearly not pleased with the results, and she, as we all, as Greg acknowledged last night, we've got a long ways to go. But let's see what happens. Have anything you want to add, Renee?
No, I think you pretty much covered it. Yep, that's about it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Would this board like to see a printed copy of those SBAC and other
Yes.
presentations?
Yes.
Okay. So I will contact Deb or Holly and ask that be forwarded to us or something, so you can see that data.
Thank you.
Do we have some correspondence?
I do not believe we have correspondence this week. Please don't. All right, so I can go on to superintendent's report if you'd like.
Yes, you can.
All right, so under superintendent's report for the month of May, under instruction, we have invited Renee St. Hilaire to Pearson, and she has started her building coverage work with Ms. Silverio. Our students performed Annie Junior at the Gilbert School and did an absolutely amazing job performing. If you went and saw the performance, nothing short of absolutely outstanding. We held interviews for the Assistant Director of Special Services, and we have a recommendation for hire tonight, and she is with us this evening. Mrs. Silverio held a parent meeting for the Project Oceanology field trip that will be held in June. Students attended field experiences at the White Memorial, Susan Grossman Trail, and the Warner Theater, and they watched the Pout Pout fish. That was Hinsdale School, so that was quite an experience, getting them off the bus at 8 o'clock in the morning, feeding them breakfast in 15 minutes, and then loading all 300 of them back onto the school bus. We conducted building walkthroughs for non-certified staff members focusing on small group instruction. On Friday, April 28th, we celebrated Staff Appreciation Day. On Friday, April 28th, at the Pearson School, they kicked off SBAC with a full day of a kickball tournament, ending with a staff versus student kickball match. Our sixth graders did end up winning. Mrs. Silverio, would you like to add anything about that day? There was only one staff casualty that day.
The highlight was when Mr. Portello almost knocked it out of the park, with his kick, and Mr. Newman followed with one equally as powerful. So the kids were impressed, but they did kick us.
So, youth won out that day, I will say that. We celebrated 320 students during the month of April, having perfect attendance out of our 613 students. That's amazing. Our students right now at grades 3 to 6 are knee-deep in SBAC testing and doing a great job so far. Our local assessment window has opened, and our students are taking local assessments throughout the month of May. Hinsdale will start their assessment window. They're doing DIBELS right now, which is their reading assessment, but they'll start doing their NWA testing this upcoming week. Mrs. Silverio's group for Hinsdale, or for Pearson, is doing states testing right now. Last Wednesday, Mrs. Silverio and I celebrated 4 6th grade students who were recognized at the Litchfield County Superintendent's Association for their outstanding character and academic performance. And teachers right now are actively completing class placements for the 2023-24 school year. Nancy and I are actively engaged in the first round of paraprofessional negotiations. We have our second round tomorrow evening. We have met with the special education team to fine-tune the budget for fiscal year 23, our current year. Nancy has a robust financial presentation tonight that we will walk you through, and also some detailed information that has really been volatile throughout the school year to share with you this evening. Under leadership, I am continuing to work and participate with LCSA. Attending CAP's legislative meeting. They're expecting the legislative season to really close out in the first month of June. And then Doug and I are continuing to partner with TGS and attend monthly meetings with them. And that really seems to be helping the relationship with TGS and having an open line of communication with them on a monthly basis, just developing a good rapport and ongoing communication with them. That seems to be working.
I have one question for you.
Yep.
Before we move on to the, last night at the town meeting, you mentioned the efforts that are going to be going into modifying or changing our reading program.
Yes.
So when we last spoke about this, the state was wanting to basically have everybody get on board with their program. We were protesting that. We wrote a letter
Yes.
asking to be exempted. So the work that you're doing, are you anticipating that you're going to have to make a change to accommodate the state, or are you just changing it because you think it needs to be changed?
So there's twofold going on right now. One, there's legislation pending that would extend everybody in the state of Connecticut for a full year, and this whole process would be paused for a school year, regardless of whether you submitted a waiver or not. This board agreed that we would submit a waiver, and we did submit our waiver. We heard just the other day that our waiver response will be provided to us by the end of June 30th. So by the end of the school year, we will hear whether or not our waiver has been approved or denied. However, we have a grant that we are in the process of writing for $50,000 for the science of reading. We know in our curriculum, based upon our own tertiary look at it, that there are things that we can do better to address the research behind the science of reading and improving areas in our curriculum. So we intend to improve our curriculum and fill those holes. Do we think that we need a full revamp of our curriculum and a new program? The answer to that is absolutely not. But we do intend to improve our curriculum to the best capacity that we think that we can get it to be. So what we want to do is use some of that $50,000 to hire high-end consultants. We're looking right now at the master class, which is run by the state of Connecticut, to be able to, they have experts in the science of reading that will come in and consult through this master class free of charge for your district and help you to identify the areas that you need to address in your reading curriculum to fill the gaps. So because these individuals are literacy experts, I am not a literacy expert, Barb is a literacy expert, we have others that are literacy experts, they're going to come in and help us to identify where our strengths are and where our weaknesses are and how we can best fill our curriculum and make it robust. But in partnership with this, we will also get feedback on our waiver, which is also an analysis of our current curriculum. And we hope to be able to get feedback through that waiver process and begin that identification process there too. Likely, though, I anticipate that this whole process will be put on pause through the legislator, but I don't intend to put us on pause because I just feel like we should just start the process, get the ball rolling, and then let's just pave our own course and just let's move. You know I don't like to wait for anybody, so I'd rather just pave our own way.
Yeah. Thank you.
You're welcome. So that is my report. In terms of enrollment, right now we are sitting at 611. We've been holding really steady in terms of our enrollment there. Our attendance thank goodness we are finally starting to see our numbers coming down for chronic absenteeism. We, again, are starting to see that monthly dip coming down, so we're averaging right now about 18.6 across the district, which is coming down from where we were last year. So if we are continuing to plot our way towards the end of the school year, I'm hoping that we are going to get that number somewhere down. I'd love to see it come down to around 13. If we can get down to around 13, we will be significantly lower than where we ended our last school year with all the COVID absences that we had last year. So that will be much improved. Gilbert's enrollment is sitting at 404 students right now. The grade-to-grade breakdown is on the next page. Any questions on those reports? Monthly budget summary. I'd like to call your attention to the additional papers that you received tonight. Part of what I am going to ask you to do, you've received a confidential paper in front of you, which I'm going to ask to collect back tonight. So I'm going to ask that you do not take this piece of paper out. And then I'm going to ask that Nancy come up to the chair and borrow Kristen's microphone. That'll be next. That's not your... This is next. So I'm going to ask you to come up. So I want to walk you through a detailed budget presentation tonight. I know that last month was our quarterly review. However, our excess cost money came through on May 1st, which is our special education funding. I want to take you on a little bit of a bird walk right now, okay? So back in January, you heard me talking about, and you heard the legislator talking about increasing the tiers for excess cost for special education reimbursement, to increasing them to 91%, 87%, and I think it was 83% for the other tier. So they had pushed all these numbers to us saying, like, here's your proposed numbers, this is what your proposed research number is going to be. That had all came through the State Department of Education. So districts went ahead and adjusted their budgets. So we slightly adjusted our budget. We did not go full freight on all of that because nothing had been official yet. Well, when May 1st came around and you checked your ECS distribution site, nothing changed. Nothing came through the legislator. The number was the same. Our distribution percent was still 78%, which was the same old percent that it was every other time we've gotten distributions. So that meant that we needed to go back and do some readjustment. However, that readjustment, as you've heard me saying, we've had a lot of influx of students coming into the district that have already had pre-placements in place. So I wanted to do a cost analysis for you, and I can't get into too much detail because then that becomes identifiable information, which I cannot get into identifiable information. However, I can share with you numeric information. So I want to paint a little picture for you of the adjustments that have happened from the beginning of the school year to current that were unplanned budgetarily throughout the school year that we have been modifying and adjusting for throughout the school year. And I met with Doug yesterday to kind of review all of this information prior to the board meeting to say, like, we're really, really tight going forward, and we have had to make some financial adjustments to ensure that we're ending this year in the black. So we've had multiple families that have ended up being homeless. And in the McKinney-Vento law, which governs homeless families, when a homeless family ends up obtaining residency now in a different town, they have by law the right to continue stability in education for their children and may choose to continue education in, let's just say Winchester, because that's where we're at. In Winchester, because that's where they were originally from, must pay the transportation cost for them to continue to attend Winchester Public Schools for the remainder of the school year till June 30th. At June 30th, then, they would be withdrawn from Winchester Public Schools and they would attend the town in which they are residents of now. However, I want to let you know, transportation is expensive, and especially whenever it's kind of unplanned. So right now, we have 4 families that we are paying transportation for at a cost of $266 per day. So that is an unplanned transportation cost. So we also have a new student who is requiring specialized transportation due to his particular situation. And that cost is an unplanned transportation cost of $1,250 per week. So that, all in all, just in unplanned transportation costs, is about $80,000 in unplanned transportation costs over the course of a very short period of time. When it comes to students that have moved into our district that have had pre-existent placements already in place, meaning they were not attending a public school, they were already placed in a specialized program, we have had multiple students, and I'm not going to say the number because I don't want them to become identifiable, but we have had multiple students move into the district, and those out-of-district placements have not reached the level of excess cost, which is that 4.5 times the amount of the per pupil, because of the timing in which they've moved into the district. So let's just say someone moved into the district in September, and their tuition and transportation cost would have been $100,000. Well, their cost, our excess cost number is about $98,000 roughly. So 2,000 of that dollars would have been eligible for excess cost reimbursement, but we would have had to have paid the first $98,000, okay? So none of these kids that I'm talking about here are eligible because of the time that they've moved into the district. So we've had to absorb that cost, and that cost for these students that have moved into the district over the course of the year has been about $545,000 that we've had to manipulate into the budget. We also had one student that we as a district have had to make the decision to out of school place. We had a student that came back from homeschooling that was not school ready and unable to be maintained in a public school setting, and that student has had to be out of district placed. And then we had 2 other students that were current students of Winchester that needed to have some an out of district placement that we could not service for a total cost of $60,000. So between out of district move-ins and placements that we have done, which were 3 that we did versus the numbers that had moved in, and transportation for various reasons of students, there has been a total unanticipated cost that we've had to work with this school year of $700,000, roughly. So Nancy has worked miracles, and we have really worked hard to make sure that we've utilized grant funds, utilized non-lapsing funds, shifted funds where appropriate, and then drilled down. Cassandra and Seamus and Nancy and I spent well into the evening Friday night buckling down and drilling down POs and tuition numbers based upon students' days of attendance at out-of-district placements, saving every last dime, drilling our budget down by every single PO that we had sitting out there. We have literally gone through every single outstanding PO. I've put a budget freeze on our spending right now across the district outside of mandatories of wages and benefits, to be able to keep us in the black because of this for the rest of the school year. So any spending across the district will have Nancy and I's signature approval for the remaining course of the school year to be able to ensure that it is absolutely scrutinized for the remaining course of the school year. So that leads me to, I'm going to collect these if you will, please. I just wanted to provide that to you so you could see it without me just talking to it. That leads me to this packet. So if you want to refer to your purple packet. Nance, I'm going to walk through it, and then I'm going to ask you to walk into it with me, if you will.
Okay, there are a couple of things I would like to say.
Yes, I want you to absolutely walk into it with me.
Okay.
Okay?
It's on the first page, this is a summary that you saw for the first time last month. And priorities are of how we utilize these resources. So the resource that we spend down first is the town support for education, because June 30th, that evaporates. The second resource we spend immediately are any Medicaid reimbursements that come in, and that helps offset the cost for our special ed employees. Then comes the appropriation, because we can't always be guaranteed that that's going to go into our non-lapsing fund. And then come the grants. The grants, the old money has to be spent first, and oftentimes must be spent by June 30, and then anything that can be carried over, we do our best to be able to carry it over, because we don't know when something like this is going to happen again. So we want to have some sort of a cushion. And of course, the non-lapsing fund is what we try very hard not to touch. So I just wanted to start with that preface, Mel.
Thank you. So what we were able to do was keep the town appropriated budget projecting to be a balance at the end of the school year of $11,912. Town support for education, we will balance that to 0, which is okay, because we want that to be 0 actually at the end of the year. Our non-lapsing budget fund will be projected to be healthy at $145,000. Our grants will decrease to about $202,000. Last month, on average, that was about $390-some thousand. So you will see in the next descriptor that we did utilize a good portion of the grants to offset some of these costs that we have incurred. So we'll describe that in the next set of numbers. So that would have our total fund left over at the end of the school year, if you were to collapse all of those resources together, of $360,000. So going into the next page, which only talks about the appropriated budget, what I had Nancy do, we had a long exercise Friday evening, and what I wanted her to do was break down each object code, and I wanted her to walk you through talking about kind of what changes and what coverage was happening in each of those object codes. So Nancy, what I'd like you to do is walk the board through each object code, if you would, please.
So this is basically adding some verbiage for variance analysis, so you know what the big items were that were driving these. So if we look at wages, our balance at the end of April was $88,000. And that was due to positions that we couldn't keep filled all year. And so we started with that. Then there's a food service reimbursement that comes in, because the food service program must be self-sustaining. So we do pay them through our payroll, but then we're reimbursed back on a monthly basis for those costs. And then we did have to use some Title I and IDEA funds to help improve our projected year-end balance in the aggregate to actually get to that $11,000 balance that Mel was describing when you look at the bottom line. And we also used a little bit of CHAMPS money, not from the CHAMPS grant, but from the other CHAMPS fund.
The revenue account?
Yes.
And that was to cover Teresa's payment,
A portion of
her
her
salary
wage.
payment, which is fine and appropriate to do
Yeah.
for that.
Yeah, one of the things is that there's some machinations in and out here, but we have to follow the accounting protocols and not be pulling supplies to cover wages. That doesn't work, so you have to be, so it's a little bit lumpy. Employee benefits, we've got Social Security outstanding, we have sick leave payout for a teacher who's retiring, we have tuition reimbursements that are still outstanding, and we still have to pay a month of health insurance that is not encumbered. So, and then we also had grants to help offset some of those costs. So that nets out to a $96,000 balance. So our personnel expense balance is quite healthy, but again, we're utilizing funds that we prefer not to be utilizing. So when we get to professional technical services, We brought in the assistant principal for these months that we needed the additional coverage. We have a physical therapist who has been doing more work than we anticipated she was going to be doing. And we had an insurance audit from our new insurance broker. So those were all unanticipated costs. In property services, all those costs are in the non-lapsing fund and in the town support for education. Pupil transportation, again, Mel spoke to the influx of students coming in. And one of the problems that really got us badly was that particularly students that came in after March 1st, which was our last reporting to the state, that's what set the excess cost number. And it was like some floodgates opened after the 1st of March, and some of these kids came in, and they're not inexpensive kiddos to take care of. So, and we've got to cover them, so that's where we are. And then the students that came in already out of district, and then ones that needed additional outplacement services. The Gilbert School tuition, oh, sorry, I'm skipping over the special ed tuition. It's kind of the same story with that. Again, it was the influx after, and the out-of-district students were requiring placements. When we get to the Gilbert School tuition, this is where I used $60,000 of the non-lapsing fund, because we did use the non-lapsing fund for that once before. That will not interfere with the state reporting, where we have to report elementary expenditures versus high school expenditures, and special ed expenditures have to be separate. It's a very clean way to do it, which is why I chose Gilbert. I wasn't picking on them. Steve's still here, he heard that, I hope. And then our other purchase services, we used grants, we used Title I, and we, that's how we got to the balance. And supplies, again, we were using Title I grants, but I did transfer the custodial supply costs that were originally budgeted in the non-lapsing fund that I was trying to cover out of the appropriated budget because I didn't want to use the lapsing fund money. I had to transfer those costs back in because that's where it was budgeted. And the equipment and software line, we had to replace the Pearson Security Network video recorder and the Hinsdale floor scrubber, which was DOA when it got to Hinsdale. And also 4 computers, desktop computers needed to be replaced. So that's why we're over there. And then our dues and fees was pretty negligible. So that leaves us with a bottom line balance of the $11,912 that Mel spoke to. If we look at the non-lapsing
Can we
fund-
just ask if there's any questions before we go on?
Okay.
Okay, let's just say we're at 11,000, that would go into when the year closes and presumably we pay all our bills 100%, which we will, that would go into the non-lapsing fund?
We would ask that it would go into the non-lapsing fund.
Okay.
Yeah, last year, the Board of Selectmen wouldn't put that big balance we had left over in the non-lapsing fund, so we'll see.
Can I ask, Gilbert School tuition, relieve budget line overages, that's not the Gilbert line that's over, there wasn't a change to the Gilbert tuition, was there?
No.
No, no change to the tuition, it's just a change in where it was being,
Where it was being- okay.
being paid, what
Thank you.
bucket it was being paid out of.
Okay, sounds great,
Okay.
thank you.
So if we look at the non-lapsing fund, which is where that $60,000 for the Gilbert School is being paid from, and you can see it right there. Our property services, when we got the new utility rate, it turned out that it was effective May 1st, which enabled us to pull some of our encumbered purchase orders down. The other thing that happened was that Hinsdale hasn't been as expensive as we had expected it to be. So there were a number of accounts where we could make adjustments to the solar vendor purchase orders we had in and the Eversource purchase orders we had in.
I
So
don't
it's
let
a
them
little
turn
bit
the
more, a
lights
little
on.
bit there. Pardon?
I don't let them turn the lights on.
There's enough windows, I don't need it.
We're saving lights on electricity.
Bring your own candle.
Yes.
So that's what happened there. So that enabled us to, in essence, save money out of the non-lapsing fund. But if I have you peek on the next page, which is where the town support for education is, you'll see that there is a cost there for property services, because
Nancy,
there's
there's
also
no town
property
support for
services
education
in
on the next
the
page. Oh, yes, there it is.
non-lapsing fund, so we were able to take some of those costs
Yeah, it's on the
because
right.
of the electricity savings and put it against, and yes, one line runs over, one line runs under, but as long as we're okay bottom line, it's not an issue with the funds, sort of call it Fund 6, with the Town Support for Education Fund. So, and then I already told you about transferring the custodial supply costs back into the non-lapsing fund. And you can see there that the $30,000 that was in the one fund balances back in the other now. So that leaves us with and the other big change on this report to bring to your attention is that if you look at the second page of the appropriated budget report, the unassigned part of the non-lapsing fund is showing in this report. And that's because I took the $60,000 additional out of the fund. And you always want to know, well, what's the bottom line we're gonna have left in the fund? And right now, that would be the $145,988. That's how we got to that number. It's on the front page. So that's a change in how previous reports have been set up, because it was always just what we had budgeted to use out of that fund. But now that things have gone the way they have, I thought it was better to just put it all out there for you.
Nancy, how much of the IDEA grant money did you have to bring forward and use?
In excess of $100,000.
And what's the implication of that for next year, not having that money? Is that gonna
Not
cost?
good.
So if you look right here, here's the IDEA, there's 31,923.
Right. But if you look at the
Projected
estimated
grant.
adjustment,
So there's no going back to the trough for that. That's money you have and.
yes, so, but in some cases, see, the estimated adjustments that are in these financials are the way that I am it's the financial management that goes into managing the financial affairs for the board and the district. It's not a definite journal entry or a purchase, it's an anticipated utilization of that. And when it looks like that has to happen, then it becomes part and parcel to the actual expenditure or encumbrance in the budget report.
So the hope is that we can continue to whittle away our stick and find savings
Right.
throughout the next month and a half.
Right.
And we can continue to incur savings along the way and build up, However, that stick hasn't been going in our favor lately, so.
No, but we keep looking. I mean,
So we're working on
$500
it though,
here
and we just
Yeah.
wanted to make sure that we had a really robust presentation tonight to share with you where we were at financially and what we had brought us to this conversation.
So to summarize, we're in this position because of two factors. One being the unexpected transition of students into the district.
Right.
The second being, we predicted that the state would give us a higher percent reimbursement than that had not materialized.
but that was for a very brief period of time.
Right, like that month or something.
Right, yes.
We had hoped it
kind
would
of
help
a
us.
little pipe dream we had.
But it never
yes.
materialized.
Yes, so, I mean, if I look at
Okay.
where we are today, and the excess cost money that the state has said we're gonna get $585,716. If I look at our out-of-district placements who are eligible for excess cost relief, the total is $772,880. So, when the town receives their education cost-sharing grant, they always receive the estimate of what the excess cost grant is going to be too. And oftentimes, they will make up the difference from the previous year, or a portion of it, depending on how much funding they have available for the towns. So it'll be very interesting to see what comes out next year from the state.
So, not related to this year, but next year, just going back to last night's meeting, Josh mentioned kind of casually that the ECS, the educational cost-sharing money, was going up by 200,000?
No, it's misrepresented on there. That's our $200,000 our Alliance grant that's labeled
I
there.
thought he was gonna.
200,966 to be
Yes.
exact.
Oh,
That's
okay.
our Alliance grant.
Yes,
It comes through with that money.
yes,
So he misstated that.
Yes.
yeah,
That's
He
our
did.
Alliance grant.
yeah.
So the other thing, just so I'm clear, the influx of students that had come in yielding the 700,000, that had happened after March 1st?
No, so that's a culmination throughout our year. Many of those have come in after March 1st, but that's a full year perspective.
Okay.
Yeah, that's just it from the latest information that I have on the students, that's all. And comparing it.
And
to-
it's not a good practice for me to give you information just from March 1st to now,
Right,
because
right.
then that would become really
Identifiable.
identifiable.
Identify kiddos, yeah.
The state reporting piece, just so I get it, sets up then reimbursements for the following year.
Sorry?
The reporting on March 1st, that affects a reimbursement for next year.
It affects what we're going to get for this year. The final payment is in
This year.
May.
Okay.
But then, when we do our final report, which is in the summertime, that's when they would make any adjustments that we might see additional monies come through. That information would come through when we get the education cost-sharing information that the state puts out with the estimated revenues for the towns.
Okay, thank you.
Can I just ask?
Doesn't
No,
matter
I
to
want
me.
to ask Nancy a question. So I just want to make sure I understand this clearly. So we're at about 770,000 of unexpected or unanticipated because of the extra educational costs?
No, that's what.
That's throughout the year.
Right,
Yeah.
What
throughout the
we've
year.
kind of experienced.
Right.
And
then we
we've
kind of
adjusted
got
for
hit,
that,
right.
yes.
And then the state kicks us back about 580?
Those are two separate things.
Okay.
So the 580,000 is what we are getting in the current year. The
Okay.
last payment for that will be in May.
Okay, and that will cover some of that 700 that we had throughout the year?
Yes,
Okay.
that's just, a few dollars short,
A few dollars
which
short.
is why we're going
Which
through
is
these
the
machinations tonight.
200 something, right?
Right.
But we might be able to get those funds of anticipated that they pay to the town,
Well,
but we're just really,
but
tightening
remember, they
everything.
discount these funds.
right,
Then it depends on how much they have to spread around and how many hands are out to justify,
right.
reimbursement.
And that comes in when, usually?
It comes out, the first payment doesn't come until like February, I think, isn't it? I'm pretty sure it's February. Yeah. So it's
February
very-
of next year?
It'll be February 24.
Okay,
I mean, it's
so we're-
really late.
Yeah,
It's just-
that's interesting.
Yeah, but that's after everybody's audit has been done.
Right.
And all of the education finance reporting has been done and such, so,
Okay,
and they cross-reference everything. and-
right,
Yeah.
okay. All righty,
Thank you, Nancy.
One other question. On 677, under the grant page, the ARP money,
Yes,
we've spent some, and we've encumbered quite a bit.
Yes,
Those funds are never gonna come back, right? The ARP money is, once it's spent, it's gone. Is that-
yes, yeah, but that goes until June of '24, that grant. That's our HVAC project.
Yeah.
Okay,
Oh,
so,
right.
so of the encumbered 1,000.
1 million.
1 million,
1
that's our
million.
HVAC.
That's your HVAC, okay. And that's a real number? That's what we,
Yes,
it's been bid?
yeah. Yeah, trust me, I looked at that many times.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, and did you want to look at the rest of it? Food service, we're still around $5,000 in the black. And our lunch volumes are the highest daily volumes that they've been. So it's creeping up close to 500 lunches a day. So this is, yeah, it's terrific, yeah. So,
Wow. Price of food's
they're
going up.
hungry.
Yeah. Your Mom and dad say eat up when you're at school.
They do.
you all set?
Thank you, Nancy.
Seems like we're trending in some sort of way there, huh?
So that brings us up to board action items. New hires.
All right, so we have Janessa Webb, who is being hired as a paraprofessional at the Pearson School, and that is an appropriated hire. Then we have Alan Nolan, who's replacing Seth Beecher as a behavior tech at the Pearson School. And then we have, I'm going to introduce and invite up, if you will, Sarah. And Cassandra, do you want to come up with her? Do you want to take a seat, Sarah? We'll put you in the hot seat. So this is Sarah Schachner. So Sarah is before you tonight as the new Assistant Director of Student Services. So Sarah is coming to us from the Heartland School as a special education teacher. Sorry for my son, Zach. She was chosen out of a pool of about 7 other candidates that we interviewed and quickly rose to the top. She interviewed Murat, just top-notch when she interviewed. Her experience with lots of elementary experience coming to us, testing experience. Sarah, do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself, tell the board?
Sure. So I am the special education teacher in East Heartland. I'm technically an employee of Shared Services, but have been working there for 12 years. Lots of experience at the elementary level and middle, because we're kind of an anomaly. Very much looking forward to this opportunity to work with the Winchester Public Schools. It was a great interview experience. I really walked away feeling like it was one of the more productive interviews I've ever been in. It was great meeting Mel. I think I have some big shoes to fill with Cassandra, but very much looking forward to the opportunity.
So she's going to be working in partnership with the Gilbert School. She's got great middle school experience to be able to help with that transition from 6th to 7th and 8th. Cassandra is going to be working with her and shadowing with her to help with the high school transition here coming up. And then Sarah's also going to be working closely with our Birth to 3 partnership that Cassandra is going to be working and training her in here coming up. Cassandra, do you want to say anything about Sarah coming on board?
Have to speak into the mic, or my boss will send me a text. I'm just really excited that you're joining the team. We've done so much work in the last 7-8 years. We're building a relationship at the Gilbert School, working in collaboration, lots of communication, and I know that you can step right in there and hit the ground running and continue to build our relationship with our staff, students, and families.
No, so Sarah will join us as an official start date for July 1. We're going to put her right to work with ESY and get her feet right with summer school. And then we'll get her started up at the Gilbert School and transitioning her over the summer to get her ready for the start of school.
Welcome, Sarah.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much and congratulations. Cassandra, do you want to introduce Sarah to Mr. Sedlak? It's kind of a staple.
We have a calendar sheet.
Yes, we do have a calendar change. So I need to make a request. So never did I think that in March I would have canceled school for wind for 2 days and crazy weather with snow and what have you. So that has caused a little bit of a problem, specifically for Cassandra and Sarah. So we have been planning ESY to start on June 21st. So that has been impacted by this calendar change. So right now, our district has always operated on 181 school days. Legislatively, we're only required to have 180 school days. So what I'm asking the board to do tonight is to back our calendar down to 180 school days. Because if we don't back it down, we are going to have to change close to 100 IEPs because our staff members will be double dipping on payments because the 21st will then be the first day of ESY and their last day of work. And I can't have them both being paid for ESY and the last day of work. We can solve this problem by making the children's last day, instead of the 20th of June, the 19th of June, which would be a half a day, which is a Monday. The staff's last day would then be the 20th. And then ESY can continue on the 21st. If it continues the way that it is right now, Sarah, Cassandra, and Seamus have to change nearly 100 IEPs and have over 100 parent meetings because they all will need adjusted to the 22nd, which is going to be a nightmare.
There's no way we could legally not even do the half-day on Monday?
That's what
No, we can't.
Because I can't imagine there's going to be a lot of learning going on the
Well, we're doing step-up day on Monday, and we're going to make Monday really, really special. So, yes, we are going to make Monday super special. So, what I'm asking for is to make Monday a half a day for students, the 19th, which would be the last day, and then the staff members' last day would then be the 20th. And that would make our calendar 180 days versus 181 and solve our ESY issue.
So even though the Juneteenth is supposed to be a holiday?
So Juneteenth, the way that the legislation is written is, it's much like Veterans Day. It has to be recognized in the school building if school is in session. Right now, none of our contractual unions have that as a labeled holiday off. So we will function much like Veterans Day, where Veterans Day is honored in the school building. So we will honor Juneteenth in the building and teach children about the importance of Juneteenth, like we do for Veterans Day. And then we will have it as a actual school day.
Melanie, this doesn't interfere with any union concerns, because sometimes when you change days, you have to
No.
negotiate.
We're good.
So you're not gonna deduct
No, so
pay.
everybody's pay will remain exactly the way that it is.
Okay.
What about Gilbert? Is it aligned with as far as transportation?
Gilbert actually is already following that exact same schedule because
Okay.
they have 3 professional development days at the beginning of the school year and we only have 2. So this actually would put us in 100% alignment with Gilbert.
Okay.
So that actually fixes transportation too.
So you would like somebody to make a motion to make that
I would
motion?
appreciate that. So would special ed.
I'll make the motion to approve the calendar change.
Thank you.
I will second.
Thank you.
Is there any discussion? All in favor? Any against or abstentions? It's unanimous. Thank you.
Applause from special services. Thank you.
Can I ask to be excused?
Sure.
I just have to head home.
Okay. See you later.
8:40.
I have to leave in 5 minutes.
I think we can get these done in 5
I think we
minutes.
should get these done by then.
Yeah.
Before you go, very quickly, let me just insert one thing. Melanie's contract and evaluation are coming up for review in June. And Nora and I normally meet with her, but I'd like a third member of the board to be present Is there anybody who would like to be that member? Or I'm going to pull a name out of a hat?
I'll do it.
Okay, Cheryl?
Yep.
Okay, thank you. Are you pretty much, do you have availability? You do,
For the next few weeks, I do.
okay.
Seamus says thank you, by the way. He just texted me.
All right, see you later, Tom.
See you, Tara. All right, so we're going to policy?
Yep.
All right, so the first policy we have it for first read, and that's 5131.21. This is amends of an older policy that was much more extensive. We discussed this at the policy meeting last couple weeks ago, whenever it was. I don't remember anymore. So the prior policy was much more expansive. This is a much more reduced policy. It covers everything we need to cover, but doesn't box us in, which other ones seem to do more. So it's a much more updated policy. This is the current CAME policy as well.
Didn't we, when we had our committee meeting, didn't we add to this policy and have an open, because we referred to the past policy, and we had taken some of that first paragraph out and inserted it so that we didn't just dive right into the Board of Education recognizes that threats are acts of violence?
That's actually correct. Yes.
I know,
Like
isn't
you
that
did.
surprising? Yeah.
So.
What was it?
Hey,
We
nothing
had,
edited.
we,
You seem so surprised.
no, that's not how I meant it, Sandra, don't be defensive, I just meant it as, I didn't remember that, and I appreciate your recalling. Because it's not reflected in the
Good.
minutes.
So, put that in the notes.
Yeah.
I thought we were changing those as we,
I thought we were too. Let me
Yeah.
just see if that got
ability to type
transferred over.
as we do it.
I'm pulling it up right now.
Because I thought you were doing it
I did.
Google, yeah, done.
I did.
Yeah, no, that's the beauty of fixing it right then.
So let me just go back.
Add the first paragraph of the old, the board recognizes that.
And I don't think we used all of that first paragraph, but I think we did use some of it.
We did, we were like the first sentence or two.
Yeah, the first, just so we didn't dive into.
And then we got into the board.
Right.
What was that?
That is 5131.21.
We're supposed to use the first paragraph of the old.
Oh, there it is.
There it is.
So that means there are certain behaviors, this first paragraph, that if tolerated, would just quickly destroy. And then it goes
So-
into the Board of Education recognized. So this first paragraph,
So let me share this. I did share it with Darlene. Okay, okay. Darlene,
all right.
I'm gonna forward this, so I'm gonna amend this, so C version sent on 5/9/23 at 8:44. Okay, so see
So
this
then if we can have a motion to move this policy to the next board meeting.
Do you want it as a first or second read?
I think it could be as a second read. In fact, I mean, we don't need, as I indicated earlier, our bylaws don't require a second read anyhow, which might be something we want to consider when we especially have mandated policies. Going through a second read is kind of wasteful.
Yes, our time is precious, Cheryl, I agree. Waste of time, right?
Hate wasting time.
Yeah. Got it. I
Okay.
just sent it to Darlene too.
All right, so then the next policy we have is the,
Wait, you gotta make a motion, move the
Oh, I'm
second read with
sorry.
the edits?
yeah,
All right, I make a motion to move 5131.2.21, sorry, 5131.21 to second read with the edits.
have a second? Okay, all in favor?
Thank you.
So it's Jeanette.
Jeanette.
Nora first, Jeanette second. She had her hand right over there.
To second read
And it's unanimous.
with edits.
And then policy the next policy we're looking at is 5145.511. This was the policy that went back to the committee. And we had discussions about how it's a mandated policy and the language tracks the Board of Education, the State Board of Education's language. This is a mandated policy. There's no changes we can make to this, and we're required to have this policy, so now it's back here again as a first read, I would like to entertain a motion for this to be approved at this juncture, since we can't make changes. There's no requirement in our bylaws for a second read.
I want to ask a question about this, if you don't mind. I'm still kind of hung up on this first sentence, and I just want to ask a question, I guess. In how, when we craft policy, right, and obviously a sexual harassment policy is a mandated policy, right? And the original policy that we're updating from 2017, we're adding in, and I'm assuming, so educate me on this, is it the state that is adding this into this policy, or are we adding this? Are you adding this into the, like, as committee chairwoman?
It's usually the state or
Well,
legislation that does.
Right, but this isn't a legislated policy, I don't believe.
So the State Board of
sexual harassment.
Education has this language, this is a mandated
Right.
policy, means it's required by legislation.
Correct.
The
For this- wait,
language
I
comes
just-
from the State Board of Education, which
Right.
crafted these definitions of which
Yes,
they're
okay,
taking
that's what
issue
I'm
with.
trying to get to the point of. So, because the State Department of Education has a definition of terms of sexual violence, the chairwoman has decided to put that sentence in, or does this go across all school districts? I'm just trying to understand how the policy is
The
crafted.
policy came from CAPE. It's not a policy I
Okay,
wrote or
so in other words-
anything.
okay.
And it's a foreign policy that comes through
Through CAPE, okay.
Through
So
CAPE.
I understand the legislative part of a sexual harassment, right? So because we have, I guess, I'm still, again, hung up on this very first sentence of sexual violence in particular. It just seems so open-ended. Sexism, racism, heterosexism. That was not in the original policy from 2017. We have changed CABE policies before. So I would like to make a motion to, I guess, clarify that first sentence.
Well, we did that. Remember
Because-
we texted that official,
We
the
called them,
lawyer?
we
Yeah.
contacted
And she
our
said you
lawyer.
cannot
No,
touch.
she said that it was, the question was, should we, or it
No,
was
the
open-ended.
question was, could we modify the language in mandated policies? And the answer from the lawyer
Was
was
no.
no.
Because we were talking about taking this first line and
And
stopping it after the word level
Right.
and deleting after that. But then we got the text and says we can't change policy that's mandated by the state.
Right, but the policy is, this policy is mandated. Mandates can be enforced or cannot necessarily be enforced, right?
No.
And
Mandates-
so- Have to be.
Mandates have to be enforced. Something's mandated means it's required.
So the
That's
sexual,
language.
sexual harassment policy is required, obviously, but my point is the sentence is not required. Because again, it's very open-ended as to sexism, racism is considered sexual violence. It seems that without specific, it's open to interpretation, so.
Are you saying that you're wondering whether the policy number is required, but not necessarily the language within that policy?
That first sentence, Nora, I mean, again, explain to me how racism is sexual violence.
I think our hands are tied, though, when it's a policy that is mandated.
And that definition, word for word, comes from the
Oh, I
State
know, I see
Department of
that,
Education.
I see that.
And we did look that up. I remember we went to the webpage.
I provided that information.
No, she did, right here.
Yeah.
They have
Yeah.
a full paragraph on what sexual violence is.
So I think we're bound, especially because it's what we looked up. We looked at the lawyer, we consulted.
And the lawyer said we cannot change the language.
Well, how can we change language of other CABE policies and not change?
Well, because if it's
some
not a
and others?
mandated policy, we can change the language. We can not have the policy, we can have the policy and change the language, but when it's a mandated policy, and when you're dealing with definitions for a policy that are already created and mandated by the State Department of Education through legislation, we are not in a position to modify that language. That is what, you wanted an opinion from the attorney. Mel texted the attorney the question.
Melanie,
and-
what was the question again that you texted?
Can look it up.
Thanks.
I said I'm in a policy meeting, is it ever recommended to change a mandated policy that is governed by legislation? So my members want to know, she said no, that's what she said.
You used the word mandated.
Yeah, mandated policy.
Yeah.
You use the word recommended, though.
She used the word mandated.
But is
She
ever
used the word
recommended?
recommended.
Is it ever recommended to change a mandated policy that is governed by legislation? Her response was no.
It's not recommended, but that doesn't mean we can't do it.
I would say that's
I would
the
take the
same thing.
lawyer's attorney
I'm
advice.
not wanting to be sued.
I would take the
It's
attorney's
definitely not
advice.
what I want.
So this is up at a first read?
So I recommend to my clients not to violate a law. That doesn't mean they don't go ahead and do it. So, you know, that's what we do. That, you know, and this is what the judge said. So she asked, recommend, no, I don't recommend you change this because it'd be violation. Okay, so that's how I would interpret that. But if you want to make a motion, I'm not going to stop you from making a motion, obviously. So you wanted to make a motion?
So, and Sandra, your only issue with this is that they're saying racism is sexual violence. That's your only problem.
As I read it, it kind of seems that way. Sexism is sexual violence.
No, it says it's connected to and influenced by other form of oppression, in particular sexism, racism, and heterosexual. For example, black women can be perceived in different ways as white women can, and that's part of the racism and sexual violence aspect of it. You know, there's a whole bunch of study about that.
Oh, no, and I understand.
So,
It's just,
it's
a very
All right.
open-ended sentence.
And like I said, if you want to make a motion, we can make a motion and proceed accordingly.
I make a motion to move 5145.511 to second read,
No one wants to move it to approval since it's a mandated policy?
right, with the sentence as it exists. Sexual violence is a multi-layered oppression that occurs at societal, individual layers and is connected to and influenced by other forms of oppression, in particular sexism, racism.
I think Cheryl was asking that
If you want to just move it to be approved as a policy versus going through another
Rather
read
than
on
going
Well,
it.
this is at first read right now, isn't
We're
it?
not required by our bylaws to do second reads on
Oh, I
policies.
see what you're saying.
So my suggestion is, especially when we're dealing with mandated policies, which aren't up for discussion pursuant to our advice from our lawyer, that we skip an extra stop, you know, just, you know, we all busy people but we need a motion for that.
We need a
Or you
motion
wanted
to go directly.
Motion to
approve
approve
it.
the policy
Yeah.
pursuant to our bylaws, or you can do a motion to second read, or whatever motion anyone wants, it's everyone's prerogative.
Well, if it's consistent with our bylaws, I agree with you. Why not just get it done?
Bylaws.
I'm adding that onto the
That's
bylaws.
another homework.
So,
So right now, my motion to second read is on the floor, just a second. I could amend my motion.
I'll second your motion of the second read.
Would you entertain a friendly amendment to make it to motion to move to approve?
Nora, are you gonna
Yeah,
look
just
at
give me a
bylaws?
second, give me a
Because
second, give me a
What
second.
you're looking for is an absence.
I'm looking for,
The
it
bylaw.
doesn't exist?
Well,
What do you
I
mean
think
an
what-
absence?
I think what Cheryl is saying is there is no bylaw.
No, there is a bylaw.
There is a
It talks
bylaw.
about it talks about that
Just
they
a second.
approve first read. There's no requirement for second read. But unless I misread it, because I was surprised.
I think we've kind of set a precedent that we're going to do second reads for each of these, so I think we should just take a closer look at our bylaws.
Which are
But I
sitting there.
would go with move it to a second read, just because that's what we've been doing, rather
never-
than change
we've-
it now.
My concern is that we've never, I know, in the absence of my ability to quickly read the bylaws, and we haven't done this where we skipped any policy, to my knowledge. I'm gonna keep my motion. My motion is to move it to second read, 5145.511.
I will second that.
As is, guys,
All right,
no
all in
changes.
favor? Okay, it's unanimous.
Well, we're not 9 right now, though, Barb. 1,
Seven.
2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7,
So we're
0.
moving it to second read.
Yeah, 7-0.
It-
Not, well, it is unanimous.
But it's only
of the
7. All right, so the next policy is 5141.4. This is reporting of child abuse and neglect. This is second read.
Hold on, Mr. Burke's okay.
And this is a mandated policy. Any discussion?
Wait a minute, wait a minute. I make a motion to accept policy 51414.4.
Point 4.
I'll second that motion.
That's
Nora and Renee.
Laura.
Nora and
Any
Renee.
discussion? All in favor? That's unanimous for 7. And I will do a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Oh, we have a vote on it. Doug, come on.
Well, you took
All in
over.
favor?
I just made a motion.
You didn't do public comment.
I thought I was retarded.
Public
public.
comment. No one's
You
here.
want me to step in at the last minute and save your ass?
Who made that motion to adjourn? Who made the first?
I did, I made the motion to adjourn.
Thank you. Doug and Cheryl, can we pick a date?
It's a softer chair.
Still alive, 8:57.
Thank you. Quick, Sandra.
8:57 PM.
I'll get the calendar
Motion
here.
to adjourn.
What time frame are we looking at?
Whatever,
Before
well, it
9.
just has to be before